This is ABTV, Animal Bites Television. For animal lovers, by animal lovers.
Hey, Brian from SnakeBytes here. It's baby colubrid hatching season, which means there's just a ton of babies, and I'm going to take you on a journey of what's hatching. You're watching SnakeBytes. There is absolutely no doubt that the best part about breeding any animals is seeing little babies. Whether you're breeding puppies or you're hatching baby snakes, it's just the most exciting time of the year. I've always said, it doesn't matter what the value of a snake is, when I see that little baby, I get super excited. And this time of year, it's absolutely crazy busy. We'll have anywhere from 500 to 1,000 baby snakes hatching almost every single day. And every morning, I just can't wait to get to the shop to see what's hatched from the night before. So I'm just gonna kind of take you on the journey of what it's like every single day when I come to work during the hatch season. And basically, it's just a matter of, just take a look at that, guys. It's so awesome to just see baby snakes, and there's some real stunners in here too, and that's what I'm going to basically be talking with you guys as we look at some of the babies that are hatching. It's just what I'm seeing in this morning. Now these are actually two different clutches here, but this is a really cool animal here. This is actually a Kostacci sun-kissed corn snake, and they're really cool. I mean, you don't see a lot of them around. Now, the Kostaccis are actually a locality of corn snake that get a little bit larger. They also don't have quite as many eggs in a clutch. And then the other animals in here are actually motley corns and hypomotley corns. Now, the motley corn and the hypo are both recessive mutations. So this animal here, this hypomotley, is actually a double recessive. And that's basically what we have in these clutches here. We have hypomotleys, motleys, Kostaccis, and Kostacci sun-kissed, which, man, those sun-kissed Kostaccis are absolutely stunners. Let's see what we have in this next clutch box here. Okay, we have, look, just take a look at the amount of snakes here. I mean, how cool is that? It's just like a pile of just goodness, and they're just so cute. Just hard to imagine that just a day or two ago, these guys were in the eggs. And these are pretty simple things here. This is just a snow corn and an albino corn clutch, which is really cool. But I've often said that the day that I don't get excited about hatching my cheapest snake will be the day that I completely get out of reptile breeding. I don't ever look at these animals as money, especially when they're first hatched. Of course, I have to sell them eventually, so we have to think about it from a business standpoint. But the truth is, I just look at these gorgeous little animals, these cute little guys, and I'm just so excited. Every single snake I hatch is just like a little miracle. And look at these guys right here. This is actually albino motley corn snakes. And that's a little pile of them. And again, it's just a double recessive mutation. The albino and the motley are both recessive. And that's really good because I'm breeding albino motley to albino motley, which just makes it 100% albino motleys, which is really cool. And again, another big old batch of snow corn snakes. Now, snow corn snakes used to be one of the most sought after corn snakes when I first started breeding. Now they're pretty common. You see them in pet shops all over the world, but this is right here. Now, I remember the very first ones being produced way back in the late 80s, early 90s, and everyone just thought they were so incredible. I still think they're incredible, but they're certainly much more common. And they're just basically a mutation between an albino and an anearthristic. So they're lacking both red pigment and the yellow pigment, and that makes them anearthristic. Now, this is really cool here. Take a look at this. This is a Pueblan milk snake, and these are really beautiful animals, little feisty little buggers too, right? Woo, look at you, little guy. Whoa, they move really quick too. But what's really cool about this clutch is that there's hypomelanistics in it. And basically what a hypomelanistic is, and I tell you, when you open up these cages, it's just like a little can of worms, just like sprouting out, like, wah! And sometimes it's everything you can do just to keep the animals in the cages. And sometimes I end up chasing them around the floor sometimes. They're so quick. But you gotta remember, remember, this is basically the first time that they've ever seen a human. So I'm sure when I'm opening up the box, and the thing's just so biting me and everything. When I'm opening up the box, they're like, what the hell is this big dude doing to me? But look at that little beauty there. That's a hypomelanistic Pueblan milk snake. And again, the melanin is that black pigment, and hypomelanin just means that it's not albino, it still has some of the black pigment, but it's stripped away a lot of it. That gives it kind of that purplish look. And hypopueblans have always been one of my favorite snakes just because they're so absolutely gorgeous. Now this is really cool here. These are actually tessera corns, but you can see in here that tessera is a codominant mutation, which basically just means when you breed it to a normal, you're going to get part of the clutch tesseras right off the bat. You don't have a recessive complex there. So this is a tessera right here, just a normal tessera. You can see that striping down them, and they have the really cool side patterns. That's basically what a tessera is. But what's cool in this clutch is that we have a couple other mutations. We have this little hypotessera, which is again just lacking some of the melanin, and then this aneurystic tessera. Now these happen to be one of my favorite of the tessera mutations. Just that black with that big stripe down it. Now that's a gorgeous snake. And we've got a few aneries in here, a couple hypos, and a couple just normals and aneries. So that's a pretty cool clutch. What is the optimal temperature to incubate most colubrid eggs? A, 82 degrees Fahrenheit, B, 85 degrees Fahrenheit, or C, 88 degrees Fahrenheit? Go ahead and answer down below in the comments and check back later in the show to see if you have the right answer. For this week's reptile report, we'll be highlighting Chelonia. Go ahead and check out the URL down below or click on the link in the description. I hatched my very first baby snake when I was 15 years old, and I've been absolutely hooked ever since. You gotta remember, you're working all year just to get that clutch eggs, and then the long wait of incubation, eventually just for the reward. To see that little head peeking out, I gotta be honest, there's just no better feeling. Every time I hatch a snake, it's going to eventually go to an animal lover. And in some cases, these babies are going to go to someone that's keeping their very first snake as a pet, and hopefully will have a lifelong journey with reptiles. Now basically, snakes will hatch over a 2 or 3 day period, and we let them all hatch out before we set them up. So the process is going to be, we're going to let them all hatch out, we're going to set them aside, and then Sam has the great job of putting them all in cages, which can be overwhelming. Now these guys are beautiful. These are albino Nelson's milk snakes, and I've always said that these things are just one of the most stunning of the mutations of all the colubrids. Just look at that red, white, and yellow. I mean, who couldn't look at that animal and just be absolutely blown away? Let's see what we have here. Ooh, these are really pretty here. Now, they're relatively common now, although look at that snake here. This is just a normal corn snake, but look at the pink in that thing. Woo! That's a beauty right there. I tell you, that's really cool. But this is really what I was going for in this clutch right here, and that's a hypo sun-kissed. Now, the hypo sun-kissed have become relatively common now. A few years ago, they were a really highly sought-after mutation and kind of rare. Now they've kind of come down in price, but they're still really gorgeous, and they get even better as they get bigger. That's pretty much in this clutch. That's about it. We've got normals and we've got hypo sun-kissed. And again, it's that opening up a can of worms here. Let's see what we got here. You know what? I love ghost corn snakes. Again, you guys know I'm into the earth tone type stuff, and this is what a ghost corn looks like. And they're relatively polymorphic. As a matter of fact, I can see one little snow corn in here too, a little clutch mate, which again, we talked about the snow corns already, but the ghost corns are actually aneurystic, which is again lacking the red pigment, but then they're hypomelanistic as well. So they're basically a black corn that's lacking a lot of the black, which gives them that kind of ghosty appearance, hence the name ghost corn snake. But it's pretty cool, and obviously that one was het for snow, which is really typical with corn snakes. When you breed corn snakes together, it's very common to get surprises in the clutch. As a matter of fact, this is kind of a neat little surprise here. We have albino corns and snow corns, but look at this little bugger right here. And it's a little tiny one though, but that's actually a butter striped corn. So again, I'm going for albinos and snows, which are just basically pet trade type animals, and out pops a little surprise. And look at these guys here. Now, I talked about oh, there's one ridiculous animal in here. All right, I talked about, well, there's a few ridiculous animals in here. I talked about the sun-kiss, which are right here. This is a hypo sun-kiss right here, but there's a couple gems in here. Holy cow, look at this one right here. This is actually a ghost sun-kiss right here. And you don't see very many ghost sun-kiss, so that's really impressive. And then there's an albino sun-kiss here, and these guys get so pretty when they get older. And then there's actually this animal here, which is really the gem. This is the one I looked at and went like, holy crap. This is actually what they call an ultramel sun-kiss. And the ultramel is actually a lilac to albino, and it just basically has that kind of purplish look to it. Man, that's a stunner right there. Whew. Oh, now these guys are little pistols. Just take a look at them right now. They're ready to go. These are Texas rat snakes. And I really love rat snakes, but they are really something else. Just look at this little guy coming at me. Look at the energy on that little thing. But these are actually, there's some aneurystic, like this one right here is an aneurystic Texas rat snake, which is kind of cool because you don't see a lot of these. They don't have a ton of color anyways, but then look at these guys here. These are leucistic, or just pure white Texas rat snakes. And again, they typically are pretty crazy. Now this one actually is pretty chill. I can't believe it, but you can see these guys in the cage are just going at each other. They're just so fired up. Look at this guy here. Come on, little buddy, what's the matter? Can you believe that? He's just so fired up. He's just like, look at him. But again, you gotta imagine that these guys have so much attitude when they're first born. They gotta really defend themselves right out of the rip. But look at them. Ooh! These guys are fun animals. And again, Texas rats, I've been breeding them. I think probably the second or third snake I ever hatched out was a Texas rat snake. So it's kind of cool. This is cool, pretty cool here. This is actually, again, there's two clutches in here, and I'll move these eggs a little bit. There's actually a black and white Cal King clutch here, which this is just a normal black and white Cal King, which is just really one of the most beautiful snakes in the fact that they got that heavy black and white contrast. And then, of course, there's some high white animals, which are polygenic, where we're just trying to breed the higher and higher white. But these guys down here are really neat, too. These are emery rat snakes. Again, they're very closely related to a corn snake, but they're a little bit different. They get a little bit larger, and they actually have a few less eggs compared to a corn snake. But then these guys here are really cool. This is what they call the chocolate version. So this is a chocolate emery rat snake, which I really like because they're really chocolatey as they get older. They're just a little less contrast. And to me, it's something that's really cool. A typical egg clutch from an emery would be maybe 10 to 12 eggs, as opposed to a corn that could have up to 30 eggs. Now this is, again, just a normal clutch of snow corns and reverse Okatee corn snakes. And the reverse Okatees just are a little bit prettier than a normal albino corn, a little bit higher contrast. But again, that's a lot of little babies, and I keep saying it, but I always feel bad for Sam. She's got a lot of snakes to set up. Now, Brooks Kings are a bigger colubrid, and I've shown them quite a bit because they get, 6, 7, sometimes even larger than that, and they're really aggressive feeders. And as babies, they're pretty aggressive too. Look at how cute that little tail is wagging away. And again, it's just that big attitude from them. But Brooks will have pretty large clutches. This particular clutch was 23 eggs. It looks like we have the majority of them hatching. And what's kind of cool is I wanted to show you guys, this is what a snake egg looks like right here. Let me put this little guy down, and you can see it's really leathery. And see right here, this is right where that egg tooth cut right into it. So again, a baby snake is going to have a little tooth on the tip of its nose, and it's just going to slit the egg. And again, being real leathery like this, it's really easy for them to get out. And then they're going to just crawl out. And again, it takes 2 or 3 days from the time that they usually slit to the time they come out. But Brooks Kings have always been one of my favorites just because their attitudes are so awesome. They're such aggressive eaters, but yet they really are great pets. Now take a look at these guys. I'm going to close this up real quick because they're little pistols. This is an albino king rat snake. That's right, those king rats are always really feisty. But you can see as a baby, they're actually pretty docile, although they're really wiry, so you have to be a little bit careful. But again, look at that big head skewed on it. I've always said if you ever came across a king rat, you would certainly think it was probably a cobra. That's a beautiful snake. And there's a whole clutch of albino king rats here. they hatch out really big. Isn't it crazy how big they are compared to the rest of the stuff? Again, this is just normal corn snakes, but really pretty ones too. They've got a really nice chocolatey look to them. And again, I keep saying, that's the starter snake right there. That's the one that everyone is gonna start with. And again, look at this here. This is just a nice, this is actually 100% hypo-Pueblan clutch, and then there's a couple albino Nelsons. Again, sometimes we mix clutches, put 2 per egg box. Obviously, I'm gonna know which ones are albino Nelson and which ones are hypos. But you can see right here, this one, let me pull this guy out without disturbing the rest of them here. This is a really pretty animal. Whoop, there's got an escapee. Again, it's like, once they get going, they're just all over the place. But this is actually a hypo apricot Pueblan milk snake. So we've talked about the hypo Pueblan. Well, this is the apricot version, which just means it has more orange to it. And it's going to be a really beautiful snake when it gets older. I saw this clutch starting to hatch yesterday, and I've been waiting for this little beauty to come out. Take a look at that. That's an albino scaleless corn snake. Now, scaleless snakes a lot of times get a lot of hate from different people, but the truth is a mutation is a mutation. And I know everyone always thinks like, oh, well, there's a difference between a scale because they're missing the scales. The truth is, I've been keeping scaleless snakes for over 10 years, and trust me, they thrive just like any other snake. So if you hate scaleless snakes just because you don't like to look at them, that's completely fine. But please, if you think that it's wrong to have scaleless snakes, but it's okay to have an albino, for instance, that's kind of hypocrisy right there. If you don't like mutations, that's fine, but scaleless snakes are just a mutation, just like everything else, and they completely thrive. You can see how feisty this little guy is, and I tell you what, when a scaleless albino gets a little size, that's gonna be one sick animal. Now take a look at this. We talked about hypo sunkiss earlier. This happens to be a hypo sunkiss motley corn snake. So that's pretty cool. This is actually a triple recessive mutation. So it's both hypomelanistic, motley corn snake, and sun-kissed corn snake. So that's pretty cool, but just look at how clean that animal is. That's just an absolute gorgeous animal. And we've got some adults now, and I just absolutely am blown away by them. And as a matter of fact, this is one step further. This is actually really cool. I'm glad I opened this box right here because this happens to be a sun-kissed hypo striped corn snake. Now the striped corn snakes and motley corn snakes kind of share the same allele. You can't ever really get a striped corn by breeding motleys, but when you breed a striped to a motley, you can sometimes get some striped corns. And that's basically what we have here, a striped hypo sun-kissed corn snake. Now that's cool. Just look how clean it is. Virtually no pattern. And there's a few other snakes in this clutch, but there's a handful of striped hypo oaks, which are really cool. So that's kind of a bonus. Oh, and take a look at this. Now you can't go wrong here. Look at this. You look in here, and it doesn't appear that there's anything in here, right? Well, that's what's beautiful about hognose snakes. And you can see there's a couple eggs that haven't even started to hatch, but I can see some eggshells. And now this was actually an axanthic bred to an axanthic, so there shouldn't be any surprises in here, really. There should just be some axanthic hognose, if I can ever find them. Oh, here's one of them right now. Whew. Oh, here's 2 of them. There's the other one. There's actually a handful that have already hatched in here. And again, this is just pretty typical for a hognose. They kind of hatch out and they just crawl right down in. What's really cool about hognose snakes is, believe it or not, they hatch and they shed typically the same day or a day later, whereas most snakes, it takes about 3, 4, maybe even 5 or 6 days to shed. Hognose, as soon as they hatch out, they shed, and a lot of these guys will literally have their first meal within a few days of hatching. Again, most snakes have a lot of yolk left in them, so they'll go 7 to 10 days before we even offer them a meal. But look at those cute little buggers. I just always love hatching hognose snakes. Let's see what we have in this one here. Now this happens to be a fire corn clutch, which is essentially an albino diffuse corn, or what people used to call blood red corns. And let's see what we have here. Now this is actually what you would consider a diffuse corn or a blood red corn. And basically they have like patternless bellies, really diffuse pattern on the side, and they have a real unique head pattern too, very different than a normal corn. And as this gets older, it's going to basically turn almost all red. You're basically going to not see any pattern. And this happens to be what they call the fire version. version, which is the albino version. Again, you can see the same kind of thing, real patternless belly, the weird kind of diffused pattern on the side, and then that head is the real true giveaway. It's almost like majority of it's patternless. And again, when fire corns get older, they get really brilliantly orange, hence the name fire corn. Oh, this is so awesome. This is great to see. This is actually a T-positive albino Nelson's milk snake. And what's really interesting about these guys is that, believe it or not, when you breed a T-positive to a T-negative or a normal albino Nelson's milk snake, you get half the babies on average will come out T-positive, which is pretty cool. Usually that's a separate mutation that you have to breed out. And so this is cool because this was a T-positive bred to a T-negative. We hatched out some of these beauties, and this one's got some amazing little bullseyes down its back instead of the banding being all the way down, which makes it even more appealing and more beautiful. Every clutch, you just open up and you just never know what you're gonna see. Again, these guys are just kind of normal stuff. We have a snow corn here, an albino corn. Looks like there's an albino motley in here, which is always funny when you have this kind of whole batch of more normal looking things. Where does an albino motley come from? Somewhere down the road, one of these animals was carrying the motley gene in it, and one albino motley popped out. So it's always kind of cool to see something like that. Again, it's just always a surprise no matter what clutch it is. Let's take a look at this last one here. This is kind of cool. Look at this. Try not to disturb it too much. Come on, buddy. This is a cow king that is actually hatching out of the egg right now. Look at how cool that is, right? And isn't it just amazing to think, like, this is its first day ever. You know, it's hatching out, it's seeing the world for the very first time. And look at just how attentive it is. You know, it's sticking its tongue out, it's kind of looking at me like trying to figure out what the heck is going on here. Probably not what a snake thinks of when they're hatching out, that they're gonna see a human. And then look at these gorgeous buggers here. Woo! That's a tangerine albino Honduran milk snake. Man, I tell you what, I remember hatching my first albino Honduran milk snake. Wow, what a feeling, but I tell you what, it's still cool to see one of these guys crawl out of the egg. What a gorgeous animal. Now, with most mutations in corn snakes, it's really either recessive or there's actually like a dominant gene in the Tessera corn snakes. But this is the one mutation that I think is pretty cool. It's one of the only real polygenic traits when it comes to corn snakes, and that's the Aztec corn. And the Aztec is basically just a pattern mutation, but it's not really recessive and it's not really codominant. Basically what it is, it started with a little bit of aberrancy and then continuing to breeding it out, and you start getting some really crazy colors and patterns. Just look at these things. Instead of basically barring or saddling, you have these crazy stripes and zigzags. And as a matter of fact, when they were first out, because they weren't as crazy looking as this, they were called zigzag corns. And then as you bred them in, someone decided to name them Aztec corns, I guess because they reminded them of Aztec architecture or something like that. But you can see how cool it is, and this is an entire clutch. Just look at the polymorphism on those guys. I mean, that's really cool. And I haven't really produced a lot of full clutches of Aztecs, so it's kind of cool to see something like that. This is another just great example of polymorphism within corn snakes. What you have here is a caramel striped corn snake. So the caramel gene is a recessive mutation, and of course the caramel albino mutation is the butter corn snake. Well, we have a little butter striped corn snake in here too, which is basically caramel butter stripe, which is 3 recessive mutations. So again, whenever you get into 3 recessive mutations, it's pretty cool. But then we have one step further here, and this is actually an amber corn snake. Now the ambers are a caramel hypo corn snake. So in theory, this butter stripe could actually be a hypo butter stripe as well, albino butter stripe. So theoretically that could be 4 recessive mutations, but unfortunately you can't tell in an albino if it's hypo or not. Sometimes when they get older, there's a little bit more of a pinkish hue to them, but again, in an albino butter stripe, you're probably not going to see that. And you know, we've showed a lot of this type of stuff. Like here's a crimson corn, which is just a really beautiful corn snake. It's basically a hypo Miami phase corn snake. And then there's just a whole bunch of other really cool stuff in here. Ghost corn snakes, hypo, Ocas T sun-kissed. And again, I never get sick of seeing stuff, even that I see tons and tons every day. And you got to remember that when we're hatching, you know, there's just so much hatching every day that, but you never really get sick of it, you know what I mean? And I'll tell you what, one of my, and I know I've said this a lot, saying favorite things, but this really is one of my favorite mutations in corn snakes, and it's really a simple one. It's just really clean and kind of sleek to me, and that's a black motley corn snake. I don't know what it is. Now, the motley originally was called a motley mutant corn snake. It's a recessive mutation, and the mutant kind of fell off over the years, and now they're just called motley corns. And essentially what it is it's that pattern down its back with those kind of what they call hurricane dots down them, and then they have really patternless sides and patternless bellies. And for whatever reason, I think the black corns are the prettiest of that particular mutation, and certainly one of my favorite corn snakes. Now, this clutch is a great example of how you really got to stay on top of things, because sometimes you can see there's just a ton of baby snakes in here, and these are all California king snakes. Now, of course, king snakes will eat other snakes, right? But as babies, they hatch out and they have a lot of yolk in them, so they're not going to eat anything for 7 to 10 days. But because there's almost 25 babies in this egg box right now, if I don't get these things set up within 2 or 3 days, they'll probably start to die because of just, being on top of each other. So we like, as soon as things are hatched out, to get them into their own cages, 1 per cage. In all honesty, I'd probably prefer not to have 25 babies hatch in one clutch when king snakes are. Just kind of worked out that way. If it was 10 or 12, it'd be a little bit better, to be honest with you. Now, these are gorgeous animals. I just absolutely love it. As a matter of fact, just take a look real quick. This is another clutch here. This is an albino Nelson's. Just peeking his head out right now. He's just like got his nose out and there's some bubbles coming. I don't know, I just get a kick out of that every time, because I think those bubbles are its first breath outside of the egg. Now, I know they respirate in the egg, but that's the first actual breath, and I just love them. But these are San Luis Potosi king snakes, or for short, people call them Mex-Mex. And this is what a normal one looks like right here. This is what you would find if you were in San Luis Potosi, Mexico. And we've been working on some polygenic traits that make them kind of wacky looking. So this is kind of the start of it. When we started producing weird ones, this was kind of what they look like. Maybe even not even this extreme, but we called them granite, and now we've been able to get them all the way to that. Now, that's a great example of a granite Mex-Mex. I tell you what, you guys know that I'm hatching. Oh, look at this little guy here. He's tried to escape on me. I tell you, these snakes, if you don't keep an eye on them, you're gonna have snakes all over the place. As you guys can see, there's a lot of snakes hatching here, and it's a great time to be a snake breeder. As you can see, this is just a small portion of the babies that we have to set up today, and almost every single day. It's certainly the best part of my job, seeing all these cool baby snakes. I hope you guys have enjoyed what I get to see every single day. Keep that passion for reptiles. What is the optimal temperature to incubate most colubrid eggs? If you said A, 82 degrees, you're 100% correct. Good job. So there it is. I hope you guys enjoyed this show. It certainly is like Christmas every day during the baby hatching season. And as always, I was Facebooking and tweeting my way through it. So make sure to follow me over at SnakeBytesTV. Until next week, you've been watching Snake Bites.
Hi, I'm Peter Birch, an Aussie bloke who loves wildlife. My respect for nature started when I was a young boy in rural New South Wales. Since then, it's exploded into an obsession. New episodes every Thursday, only on AnimalBytesTV.